Hello, welcome to Oklahoma Moments. Today we have with us a very special guest, one that's very important to the Wilson Historical Museum and the Wilson Historical Society, Miss Carole Gandy Pinches. Welcome to Oklahoma Moments, Carole.
Thank you, Corrina. I'm happy to be here today.
It was rather hard for us to get our schedules together and get you on here. I've been trying for several weeks, but we finally made it, and I'm proud. And Carole, there's a lot of people that have read your name in the paper or heard about you, but I want to share your life with our viewers so that they can know the other Carole that is out here, and the Carole that has been involved for several years on a history of Wilson. Carole Gandy Pinches, this is your life. Now share with me about your grandparents, the Gandys and the Comptons, and tell the years they came, and start out with whichever one you want to start out with first.
Okay, why don't I start with Daddy's parents, Ross and Ella Gandy. They came to Wilson in 1918 when Wilson was just a very young city. They came from New Mexico and were here until both of them, of course, had to be put in rest home, in a nursing home in the 70s, I believe it was. My mother's parents, Jewel and Carl Compton, and Jewel was better known to everyone here in Wilson as Judy. Yes. They came to Wilson in 1924. Mother was just a young girl at the time. Carl, my uncle Carl, was just a few months old at the time. And Mother and Daddy, of course, grew up here in Wilson and went to school together, and they started dating when Mother was 12, maybe just barely 13. And she and Daddy knew immediately that someday they would be married. They had to wait, of course, until they were of legal age. They were married here in Wilson in 1936.
Was Pauline Austin at their wedding?
I don't know whether she was actually at their wedding, but she was their music theory teacher.
That's what I was asking. Well, I was asking because recently at our Chamber of Commerce banquet, your mom was there and she was there, and I don't know why I didn't get a picture to capture for historical purposes and for the paper, but there she was your mom and dad's teacher. And they were together at our banquet.
Yes.
And I thought that was neat. Go
well,
ahead.
They have remained friends all this time, and Pauline is a wonderful person.
Oh, she's a lovely person. And she's always, I met her years ago when she was real active in the community concert. And she'd come out, and I was the community concert chairman for Wilson after Miss Tyser, Rhoda Tyser, got in bad health and couldn't do it. And that's when I met Pauline.
Well, she's a wonderful person, and I would love to have been around when she was teaching music theory, because she was so young. She wasn't much older than the students that were in her class. But to take it from there, Mother and Daddy, as I said, were married here in 1936. Daddy was working by that time in Stillwater, so they moved to Stillwater. Mother moved to Stillwater, I should say, since Daddy was already there, and lived there for a very short time after they were married. Then they went to Pawhuska for a few months, then settled in Oklahoma City, and that's where...
Okay, now, pardon me for interrupting,
That's okay.
but I knew your dad very well, and I would do articles on him and visit with him at the Lake Murray reunions from the 20s and 30s reunions, and now it's got to where they try to include everyone. But at one time, now where did his military service come in at? Was it after he settled in Oklahoma City?
Yes, it was after Mother and Daddy settled in Oklahoma City. In fact, it was several years after I was born. I guess I could tell you what year that was,
no,
but I don't think I would tell my age.
Never mind, Carole.
Mother and Daddy, I should say, and I went to Colorado Springs. That's where Daddy was stationed during World War II, and he never had to go overseas, fortunately. So Mother and I were able to stay right there with him.
Right.
And when he was discharged, Mother and I came back here to Wilson, and in fact, I went to school. I was in first grade at the time we came back. And I attended South Ward.
Oh, really?
Just for about 3 months while Daddy was in Oklahoma City trying to find housing for us, because after the war, housing was very scarce. So Mother and I lived with my Compton grandparents during that period of time. And I think it was at that time that even though I had come to Wilson very frequently as I was growing up until that time, I think when I started going to school here for those few months, Wilson just seemed like home to me, and I made a lot of friends that have always been there for me, but I've not been close enough to most of them to maintain a lot of contact. But Sarah Jane Wadley, for example, was one of my dearest friends at the time.
Well, do you remember Deanne Gown?
Yes, Deanne was in that group that we ran with, and Moline Epley.
Yes.
And there was just a good group of us that had a lot of fun together in those times. And every summer, I think Mother and Daddy and I were here every holiday.
So you'd see them?
I'd see them all the time, and I maintained those contacts. And even later on, after I kind of lost those contacts when we were particularly in high school, probably because I wasn't coming as frequently, we would see each other at Rainbow Grand Assembly, and so would renew our acquaintanceship again all over. It was kind of like we'd never left each other.
That's great. So that helped a bond there that you've even maintained through the years.
Right.
Yes.
Even though we still don't see each other frequently. Yes. But I know that we could pick up where we were the last time we saw each other and really be good friends. And that's a good feeling.
That is great. Well, then you met your husband then while you were going to college?
Yes, at Oklahoma State University. A fraternity.
And your husband, George?
George, yes.
George Pinchas.
A fraternity brother of his and a sorority sister of mine who were dating both concluded that we needed to meet each other. So we met on a blind date. Blind date. Our marriage has worked beautifully. Theirs, unfortunately, did not. But we have lots of fond memories of Oklahoma State. It was a nice place, and we had a chance a little bit later on for George to go back there and be on the faculty for 3 years.
Well, now, where all did you live? And as you tell about where you lived, I know you have 2 children, a son and daughter. And then as you tell, then I know your son has a little boy,
yes,
Andrew, and then I think you may be expecting
a second one.
Yes, so as you tell, the places that you lived, we'll tell when your children were born.
All right. Well, let's see if I can do this in some kind of chronological order. George and I were married in August of 1962, and at the time he was working on his master's degree at Oklahoma State. So we stayed there for a year. After that, we went to Houston, Texas. He was in the banking business while we were there. And then while we were there, he decided if he was going back to get his PhD that he should do it then rather than waiting. And all of a sudden, he had a call from the dean at Michigan State University offering him money to come. I was 3 months pregnant with Susan, our daughter, and this was in December. We left Houston in December of whatever the year this was, 64, I think, and it was like 85 degrees the day after Christmas as we were moving our things. We got to East Lansing, Michigan. It was 13 degrees, and there was about 6 feet of snow on the ground, and being born and raised in Oklahoma, believe me, I did not know quite how to act, especially being pregnant.
Yes, I know what you mean, because I lived in the Rio Grande Valley for 5.5 years, and we left there to go. My husband was being transferred to Anchorage, Alaska, to Elmendorf Air Force Base. It was 70 degrees in January. We landed in Anchorage, Alaska, and it was 40 below zero, and snow was up as high as the roofs of the houses. So I know exactly, and my kids had never seen, my 2 boys had never seen snow. Can you imagine? They went wild.
I bet they had a good time there, that's for sure. But Susan was born then while we lived in East Lansing, and then, George, of course, we were there until 1968 when George finished his PhD. He had had an offer to come back to Oklahoma State University to be on the business faculty there. So we spent the next 3 years, from 68 until 71, in Stillwater, and that's where our son Bill was born in 1970. And then in 71, George had another opportunity. It seemed like he was always having opportunities to go someplace.
That's great.
And people have teased us because for the most part we've stayed in Big 8 schools with George teaching at those. In 1971, we went to Columbia, Missouri for him to teach at the University of Missouri.
What does George teach? I never have asked him.
He teaches corporate finance.
Oh, really?
And loves it. He just...
And so that's what his PhD is in.
Right.
Wow. I have never, I've visited with him as many times as I've talked to him, and I have never asked him what he taught. And he is, you can see how college kids would love him because he is so easy and so relaxing to be around.
But he's a tough teacher. You should ask his students about that.
Yes, I had him to critique a paper for me once, and I thought, George, I didn't give it to you to write on.
He's very good at that.
It had red circles and red marks all over it, and I thought, George, I didn't give it, but it helped me. I was proud he did.
Right. But we stayed at the University of Missouri until 1977 when we moved to Lawrence, Kansas, where he would teach at the University of Kansas. And that was our home for 21 years before we came here last summer.
Well, so then coming here, after you've been in a place for 21 years and raised your family, and then before we go on and leave your children and get into all of this other, where do your children live now?
Susan, our oldest, is in Kansas City. She and her friends from the University of Kansas, where she went to school, just kind of migrated to Kansas City after they graduated, and I don't think she will ever leave there. Neither do I think she will ever get married. She's perfectly content. She loves her career. She works for a company by the name of DST Systems, and she's a senior business analyst for them, and I can't completely understand or even begin to explain what she does, but this company deals in computer software for mutual fund companies and banks, businesses of that nature.
So kind of a chip off the old block.
Yes,
like
Susan definitely
she was
fell
a daddy's girl.
Yes, she fell in her father's footsteps, and at times George says that Susan can just talk circles around him as far as knowing the business of stocks and bonds and mutual funds and all those kinds of things.
That's great. It doesn't make you feel good to know your kids. You think, well, I can't learn from kids, but hey, my children have taught me a lot.
Right.
Yes.
Well, and we're really proud of what Susan has done because she completed her bachelor's degree, of course, in business, and then went on in Kansas City at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, to get her master's in accounting. And she loves, you can just tell by talking to her, she loves everything she's doing. And she thinks a lot of her career, and I think that's why we'll probably never have any grandkids from Susan's side anyway.
You'll have to stick to the pinches.
That's right, I think so. And Bill was married in 1993. He married his college sweetheart. Catherine and Bill met at Bates College in Lewiston, Maine, which is a private liberal arts college, and they were married after Bill graduated. And Bill immediately applied, or had been in the application process for quite some time. He wanted to go into a seminary because at that time he thought he wanted to go into the ministry. So at this point his focus has changed a little. He now wants to teach in an academic arena, probably in a seminary. And at this point, he has earned 2 master's degrees, one in divinity and one in theology. And he's working now. He has just finished 2 years of classwork on his PhD. And
we'll have 2 Dr. Pinches.
That's right. And he will complete, he will do his orals and his comprehensive exams in the fall. In fact, in September, when their baby's due in late September. So, or their second baby, I should say.
Now, and Andrew, how old, now you just flew up there recently for his
third birthday.
Yes. And it was a big, what do we call it, big shindig or big?
Yes, there was, and it was fun to be there. And of course, this is in Princeton, New Jersey. Bill goes to, I'm not sure I mentioned this, but he goes to school at Princeton Theological Seminary. Andrew is just our little doll. I just wish that the only thing that I could hope for in having a grandchild would be to be closer to him, because I miss not having him around. But now he's big enough; he knows us when he sees
you call
us.
or when you see him. Wait until
that means a
you
lot.
call up and he'll say, "Oh, what does he call you?"
He really doesn't yet. He responds, Catherine and Bill kind of put names with us, and so George and I are grandmom and granddad. And he seems to have not called us that yet.
But he knows.
But he knows exactly who it is.
That's great.
So
I noticed how your eyes lit up when you got to Andrew. They were sparkling on the children, but then when it got to Andrew, well, they just really glowed. And, well, you lost your precious father, and almost 2 years ago. And I know you were working on the history of Wilson, and you were rushing so to try to get this completed, I'm sure, for like a more or less a gift to him. You'd probably, I'm sure you would have presented him with the first book.
Right.
And it would have probably been dedicated to Carole Gandy.
Yes, you're right.
I just kind of felt like it would, because I know that he was the one that would tell you all the things in history. You, I'm sure, were Daddy's girl, and he was so good at telling and relating these things. And and your interest grew, and you just had to do a history that you were going to do for your dad and your mom too, but in order to preserve the history of both of your grandparents. And then it got to growing and growing, and of course you had to put it on hold during your dad's illness when you lost him with cancer, which was a heartbreak, a great loss to all of us. I was proud to see the memorial tribute that his friends did for your dad with the display cabinet in the Wilson Museum, public library. They do that so good there and use it, and I think your dad would be very proud of it, don't you?
I think so. I know he would.
Because each month there's a display, different display. Someone's hobby here in the area displays their hobby at the museum, and if you haven't noticed it, as you go in the front, just right on your left as you go in the door, if they haven't moved it, I think it's
still there. And for the first time next month, I will have a collection there.
Oh, great!
And I'm excited because all of our kids and Andrew will be here next month. So.
Oh, great!
So I'm
looking forward to seeing them. And then everywhere I go that I'm with you, people we don't even know come up and say, are you the lady that's working on the history? Tell our viewers, because there's a lot of viewers out there that probably send in information or pictures or history. Tell them what you're doing, what the status is on that history book.
The history is still out there. I'm still working on it. I'm going rather slowly on it right now because of working on the Historical Society and the museum. But it will be finished. There's no question about that. It's just a matter of when will it be finished.
Well, and it's still a little painful to you too, Carole, because your dad had such love and input, and I know you would question if there was some question in your mind, you would ask him, and he was so alert on all of that. I'm sure it's a little bit painful, and so probably time passing with you being involved in moving to Wilson has probably eased some of the hurt in getting back and working with it.
Yes, but in a way it's also been a little bit more difficult because I can't help but think about Wilson and Daddy. And I remember all the nights that I spent with him in the hospital after his cancer was diagnosed. He would sit and just insist that we tape information that he wanted in that book, and so much of it was about Wilson and what Wilson was all about in the days that his parents
That sounds like him.
Right. And I have all of that on tape, and I started to go back at one point and try to listen to it, and I couldn't.
I know. I lost my mom in '88, and my utility room and closets are full of things that my sister brought down. That was Mom's. And I still haven't been able to go through it. So I relate to that. Of course, I had lost my dad earlier, and then Mom was it. Mom had held the family together, and so I can relate how painful it is. But one day you'll get back into it, and I understand because Carl's been paralyzed and can't sing or talk he can hum, but for 14 years. And I have tapes that I thought I would really want to play. But every time I play one of his tapes where he played the guitar, piano, and sang, I start crying.
Sure.
So I put them up. So the day will come when you can get into
right.
it. But the move, you moved to Wilson, and you were only here, what, 3 months when your mom decided she wanted to move to Wilson?
About 2 months, actually. We still weren't even unpacked. We were still living in our office in the downtown area.
Yes, you
here.
bought the building Bob Longest had,
Yes.
where he had insurance office.
And so George and I, as we talk about it, say we camped out there for a few months while our house was being built. But in the midst of all that, Mother decided she wanted to move from Oklahoma City. It had been very difficult on her staying there without Daddy, even though she had wonderful friends.
Yes.
But she felt like being around family was probably what she needed most. So we're happy to have her in our home.
Yes, it's great to have her. And then, goodness, you had to deal with her. You and George and your mom went on a trip to Hawaii. And the first night there, tragedy fell.
Right. Actually, it was Mother and I who were there by
was it?
ourselves.
Oh,
George
that's
was
right. He couldn't go.
He was in Taiwan, and Mother and I had almost gone with him. And if we had gone with him, perhaps that would not have happened. But if it had happened, I'm glad we were in Hawaii instead of Taiwan. You don't know what kind of doctors, hospitals, etc. So we had been in Hawaii 24 hours, 26 hours, I think it was, when Mother and I were walking to dinner, and the street was very uneven, and she tripped and fell and broke her left shoulder and her right knee. Had to have surgery there, and then after we finally were able to get her home, we had to, she had to have a little bit more surgery and physical therapy. So I spent essentially about 5.5 months with Mother at that time, after having spent several months with her after Daddy died. So this is one of the reasons the history
Well,
isn't,
and several months
isn't
before
right.
You lost your dad, too. So
actually, that was
just
only
about a
few
year
weeks.
there together. I mean,
really did.
Then moving her here, and your house, living in that office and everything in boxes. You've done great. And going to all the meetings, and then jumping right in. And with your desire to start the Historical Museum and Historical Society in Wilson, you jumped right in and started that. And still living out of boxes, or
right. We're still not settled, but we'll get that way someday.
Yes,
the
you
more,
will.
most
and
important
you finally
thing
got
now,
to move out of the office into your
Right.
new home,
Right.
and it's a lovely home. But with that Historical Society, you brought a flyer. Let's show the building
right.
where that, and as that's being shown, that says at the top, it says the City of Wilson Historical Museum and Historical Society. Preserve our past and promote the future. And that's what your dad wanted, wasn't it?
That's exactly what he
And
wanted.
at the bottom of that, Carol, read the officers, tell the officers, because at the bulletin there, flyer is larger than that, but for you to see a good view of the building, well, we're not showing the officers, but tell.
Okay, Carl, my uncle, is serving as vice president.
Well, and you're the president.
I was going to leave that till last, okay? Barbara Burris is serving as our secretary, and Corrina is our corresponding secretary and reporter, the reporter's job being much more important as far as I'm concerned. She does a wonderful job
thank you.
with your publicity. The treasurer is Joy Lynn Baker.
Oh, doesn't she do a good job? Now, she made this flyer.
Yes, she made this flyer.
She does great. Tickets, membership cards, whatever.
Everything.
She is great.
All I have to do is tell Joy Lynn I need something, and she gets to work on it right then. She just does a wonderful job. Our editor is Anna Heath. Now, we haven't actually had anything to edit yet. We're hoping to have a newsletter that will start fairly soon. And our parliamentarian is Joy Don Baker. So we have a wonderful group of officers and a wonderful group of people to work with. And
well, you were telling me about the board, the new officers for the museum.
We have, the museum has their own separate governing board, and my husband George has been elected president, or actually chairperson of that.
I'm proud of that, because poor George, we talk about Carol, that gets George involved too, because he has been behind you all the way, researching and doing, and honeydew things
Right.
and all, and he has supported you great.
Yes, he has just, I couldn't do all this without him.
He's made it possible for
Right. And he's the one who's made it possible for us to be here in Wilson, too, because this was a place that we both decided we wanted to retire, but if he had not been completely supportive of what I wanted to do, then we probably would not be here to this day.
Well, we're certainly grateful for y'all selecting Wilson, Oklahoma to be your home, to make your home, and you're an asset to our community and to the Methodist Church and Historical Society and Historical Museum. This may have still been a dream in someone's head. I know I had the dream and several others, but it may have still been there if you had not come in with all of your dreams and ideas and energy and vitality and wisdom and knowledge.
Well, I couldn't do what we're all doing now with it if it hadn't been for everyone working together.
It's
Corrina, and I appreciate that.
team effort.
Yes,
but,
definitely.
But every team has to have a leader or a coach.
Right. And then our other, let's see, the other officers on the museum board are Anna Heath is serving as secretary.
Oh, she's great. I'm proud.
Yes, I think she does a wonderful job. She's had lots of experience at the Greater Southwest Museum. And then Joy Lynn Baker serves as treasurer of that, too. She's a little concerned about how she's going to keep her money straight since she's...
Just have one money back for that one money.
Right. But these are all wonderful people.
Oh, yes.
I'm really proud to have all of them working together.
And I'm proud to the way our mayor, Ron Alexander, and our councilman, Jay Allred, and Rex Rutledge, and Bud Young, and the new councilman is Les Thurman.
Yes.
And, of course, the new councilman may ask questions about some of the meetings or whatever, but they will support because the others know about it. And I am proud the way our city officials and our business community and all the individuals out in the community are supporting our historical society and museum.
I'm very pleased, too, because when I went to them with this idea of a museum, I did not know what their reaction might be. I thought maybe they would turn me down, so I've just been happier than I could ever imagine being, since they were so willing to donate a building for us and support us as they are doing.
Well, and I know if we had not had the building, if the city had not had the building, I know that y'all wanted a museum so bad that you were willing to even buy a building to fix that in. But any of you out there that would like to join the Historical Society, it's $10 a year. We meet the first Wednesday of each month at the Wilson Rotary Hall at 11:30 with a luncheon. The cost of the luncheon is strictly donation, and all donations goes to benefit our Historical Society. And so we'd love to have you, and if you don't know Carole or haven't met her, we'll come out and meet her. She's a lovely person and a hard worker in our community. And is there anything you would like to share or tell? Or
Not that I can think of, Corrina. I think you've covered the territory here already this afternoon. It's been very nice to be here and to have a chance to visit with you. I know you've been after me for several weeks or a couple of months for me to do this, and I'm glad we finally have had that opportunity.
Well, it's great to have you on the show, and you as one of our citizens and part of Wilson, Hometown USA. Thanks for all of your work you've done. I appreciate it, and of course you know that I'm interested in history and genealogy and all of that, and I certainly appreciate the work that you and your precious husband are doing here in Wilson, not only for our community, not only for our Historical Society and Museum, but as a blessing to our community. Thank you, Corrina. I've enjoyed being here and talking to you.